My dog Ruby was born on December 19th, 2010. She had just turned 10 last year. I remember the day I met Ruby very vividly. My parents told us we were going on a family day trip to this vague farm. I think they had told some of my older siblings what the plan was, but I think they wanted it to be a surprise for me. Even after Ellie, my older sister, asked me, if we were to get a dog, what kind of dog would I want? I still had no idea what the trip was for. We left on the trip and after an hour arrived at the farm. We pulled up slowly, and there I saw Ruby and her sister through the window. None of my family really said anything, but they kept looking at me. Mom broke the silence and said something like, "They're both girls, so I'm sorry if you wanted a boy. We can keep looking." Everybody looked at me for a response, and in that moment, I felt incredibly and individually seen by my family. We then met Ruby and her sister. After playing with them for a while, we scooped Ruby up and headed home. She sat in my lap the entire drive, and I just remember thinking, I'm gonna love the crap out of this thing. I quickly learned that having a puppy was very stressful, but also fun. She would always whine when I put her in her crate, so I did things like brush my teeth right next to her while she laid on my bed in her crate, just so she would calm down. I also learned that having a dog who gives birth to dogs can be stressful, but also really fun. Ruby had 2 sets of puppies after our neighbor's dog climbed our fence a couple times. As a 10-year-old, I learned a lot from Ruby about the reproductive system, more than any sex education from my school or parents. Things like why her nipples got big all of a sudden, something about being in heat, and wearing diapers for other reasons than just potty training. Those summers when Ruby had puppies were the best summers of my life. Watching the puppies all scatter out the sliding door onto our porch as a few of them beelined it for the pool always made my day. Some of the puppies would tumble into the pool, and me and my siblings would jump in to rescue them, like the heroes we were. As fun as Ruby was as a puppy, and taking care of her puppies was, it wasn't my favorite part about Ruby. One of my favorite TV shows is BoJack Horseman. There's an episode where the main character, BoJack, is speaking at his mother's funeral. His mother was extremely cruel and abusive to him, and he hated her a lot. He talked about how he wanted to say one last fuck you to her on her deathbed before she died. However, right before she breathed her last breath, she looked at him and simply said, "I see you." He then goes on to analyze what she meant by this statement. Was this an "I see you" like, I see through your bullshit, and you won't get away with being such a bad person? Or was it an "I see you" like I see your flaws, but I love you regardless? BoJack then grows angry that his mom, even after death, has the power of her approval over him. He was so ready to move on from her, but her simply saying, "I see you," had such an impact on him. My point in bringing this up is to draw attention to how powerful it feels to be seen. To feel seen is all I've ever wanted. And growing up in a big family, that can be hard to feel sometimes. My favorite part about Ruby was that 15 minutes after I got home from a long day. After exiting the car, she and I make brief eye contact through the window, right before she darts to the front door, howling the entire way. I open the front door, only to be greeted by a dog turned wild with excitement. Before I can set anything in my hands down, she jumps up on me, just to see if it really is me. As her claws start digging into my sides, I get on my knees to reach eye level. She then puts both paws on my shoulders, and we embrace, while she quietly makes sure I still smell and taste the same. We exhale, and she begins to run circles around me, rubbing her sides against me to make sure all other dogs can smell and know that I'm hers. We both sprint to my room and jump on my bed. This is where I spend the next few moments lying on my bed, as I decompress from my long day. She lies next to me, simply content with my presence. She looks at me, and without saying anything says, "I see you." Ruby saw me, and I never questioned her love for me. She taught me a lot about how to make other people feel that way too.
Hello and welcome back to That Which Binds Us. George, do you want to talk a little bit about what that was and why we're doing this podcast about animals today?
Yeah, so I'll introduce that a little bit. I'm George, the other co-host, here with my brother Jack. The name of this podcast is That Which Binds Us, and I think something that I've always felt binds me to other people is my love for the pets that I have in my life. I love hearing about other people's pets and why they love their animals. And so what I just shared there was a speech that I gave in front of my family after our family dog passed away in the summer of 2021. And yeah, I had her for 10 years of very formative years for me. And yeah, she just meant an immense amount to me in my life. And yeah, I was there for a lot of major milestones. And yeah, so that's what that was me trying to give words to how much she means to me.
I'll never forget the first time I heard you give that eulogy. Maddie and I had the siblings over for like a funeral of sorts for Ruby. And it's funny because you introduced Ruby as a family pet, but you gave the eulogy. We were all there watching you and following your lead. She was pretty obviously your dog. And even in what you just said, she was clearly your dog. And so when George and I, we knew we wanted to have another episode, just us two, where we talked. And it was pretty obvious. It was like, animals. We got to talk about animals. George is just like the animal guy. And it felt very right to have George talk a little bit about his love for animals. And right now he's got a cat named Petey, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But even now, his connection with Petey, watching his connection with Petey is something so fun and interesting to watch, and very reminiscent of how I remember watching him with Ruby back when he was 13, 14, 15 years old, because they were just best buds. And like I said, at the funeral at our house, when George gave the speech, everybody just watched George and watched and listened. And I think everybody just knows, anyone who knows George just knows that the love that he has for animals and for pets is otherworldly in the most special way I think I've ever seen anyone love anything. And it feels, I'm just so glad. I'm so glad that we're doing this episode, and I'm so glad that George gets to talk a little and cry a little about some of his experience.
Yeah, I've been really thankful because, you've kind of pushed me in it a little bit to really embrace this part of myself. And it feels kind of vulnerable. So I'm glad you've been pushing me in it, because it is a part of myself that I am very passionate about and love to express, but afraid to a lot of times.
So a question I have, we were talking about this a little bit just in planning out this episode. Something I'm nervous to do really for anybody is to put them in a sort of bucket that's like, oh, you like X? Oh, you're the X guy now. Like, you like video games? You're the video game guy now. So I have inadvertently put George in the bucket of like, you're the pet guy. Everybody knows George is the pet guy. And so I want you to answer, how do you feel about that? How do you take pride in being the pet guy, or do you wish that people knew a little more about you? Or why do you think you're the pet guy?
When I look at our family growing up, obviously we had 12 kids. So I was fortunate enough to have a title like that. It was the dog whisperer is what everyone called me. So I at least had a defining characteristic that made people think of me when they saw someone else's pet, or it was like, George would love this.
Yeah.
So I was definitely put in that box. But there are worse boxes to be put in,
Yeah.
So as a result, I remember I house-sitted for so many people growing up.
Yeah, that was
took care of their dogs. Yeah. So yeah, all that to say, I've never really like pushed against it. That category, being in that category, I've enjoyed it.
Yeah. And it's come to be true. Like, you're still the pet guy. You haven't really tried to separate yourself from that at all. Like, you're a cat guy now. You have a cat in your house.
Yeah.
And everybody knows you have a cat in your house.
Yeah. So yeah, I love pets. I've fully embraced it. I think I said earlier on one of our podcasts, I think the self-expression one, but I was like, yeah, I've gotten a lot more comfortable just talking about my cat. Because I love it, and I'm not as worried about if they think this is interesting or not, because me just expressing myself is plenty.
Yeah. Well, even in Maddie's episode earlier this week about play, you talked a little bit about Petey and how like watching him be present in a moment helps you be present in a moment too, which I thought was like really beautiful. I loved hearing that. I've never considered that through the lens of having a pet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was gonna ask you, what are your earliest memories of our pets, our family pets?
Yeah.
Because I think you probably remember a few more dogs than I do, because we went through a couple dogs.
Yeah,
there
we
at the
went
beginning.
through 2 different Sadies. Do you remember either Sadie?
I was trying to, like, in my head, like, what's the over-under on Sadies we had? I was like, there's no way we had 3, right? 2 sounds right.
At least 2, potentially 3. One was a nasty little white, like poodle, like toy poodle.
Yeah.
But it was
and literally
it was
nasty because it was always covered in mud.
It was, yeah. It was.
It wasn't a white dog.
It was one of those crusty dogs. Yeah. And so we had her, and I think I was too young to remember whether I liked her or not. She just had the same name as a dog that we got later that I know I didn't like, and that was Sadie the Rat Terrier. And she wasn't a rat terrier. I think she was like actually a fox terrier. She just looked like a rat. And
She was really small.
She was tiny and like naked, and she just looked like a little rat. And you probably hate that I'm talking so shitty about this.
Oh, I don't remember. Yeah,
you don't remember the rat terrier either?
I remember her existence, but no relationship to this dog.
I remember those 2 dogs. I think I was alive when we had another dog named Max, I think. I don't remember that dog at all. I couldn't even tell you what kind of dog that is.
Yeah.
And then,
which, if the audience, if you're following along, that's 3 dogs in the span of 5 years.
Yeah, 5 to 6 years. So who knows where they ended up? They did not end up with us, though.
No. No.
So that also shows our family's relationship
Commitment
with
to our pets.
Well, because I also remember cats. We had cats.
Yeah.
Which you also had a extraterrestrial relationship with our cats too, that none of us wanted out. Nobody in our family wanted cats except you. And then once we realized that you wanted cats, we were like, okay, I kind of I like having these cats now. Like, it's kind of fun to have cats that at least one of us loves dearly. And you fit that role really well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I remember we had cats.
I don't even remember when we got those cats, but they, as early as I have memories, I remember Chester and Sophie, both
Okay,
our cats.
so yeah, do you go back further to Penelope and Ferguson?
I remember those names, but no,
Yeah.
I don't physically
Which
remember
I think
them.
still to this day are the coolest names for cats in the world. Ferguson and Penelope.
And then we shat the bed with back-to-back Sadies.
Yeah, where did it go?
I don't
Where
know.
did the cool names go? But yeah, we called him Fergie, and we called her, what did we call her? I think we just called her
Penis?
Penis. Yeah, I remember calling her Penis. But yeah, so after both Sadies, then we got Stanley.
Which, yeah, I think that was the birth for me.
Yeah,
Of
that
like,
was
oh,
when you were
I
old enough
love
to have
animals.
memories.
Yeah.
And I do remember Stanley. I remember that very vividly. I don't know why we decided to do it. We, at that point, we had Sophie and Chester, the cats. This was after Ferguson and Penelope. I hope you're following along. And then we brought Stanley home. We went to a
shelter, I think.
shelter. That's it. And I remember seeing Stanley, and he was a fluffy ass black
Shaggy.
poodle, Shaggy. Yeah. Are you saying that's his name?
I think that's actually... No, I think his name was
Scooby
Scooby.
was his name. Yeah. Which was funny that you said Shaggy. I was like, I'm pretty sure it was Scooby, not Shaggy. But yeah, he was just a cute ass, chill ass dog.
Like medium-sized,
Yeah.
medium to small-sized
Maybe
dog.
30-ish pounds.
Yeah.
Maybe 35. Yeah. So I remember Adam and I picked him up, and we were like, we want this one. And we were thinking of names. And this was in peak Office. It was like, the Office was huge. Steve Carell.
It's like 08,
Jim.
2008,
Yeah, 08,
2009.
09. And we're like, this black dog.
Mellow.
He's kind of fat, kind of mellow.
Maybe he's sassy. Who knows?
He's Stanley. and as soon as we said Stanley, we're like, yeah, that's it. That's his
I
name.
remember you guys were like, let's name him an Office character. That's how you guys started. And you guys said Dwight, and I was like, can we revoke their right to name the dog?
And you were like 5, and you had a better brain than us to name the dog Dwight.
But Stanley really did fit.
Stanley fit so perfectly.
It was perfect. I remember, so you guys came up with the name, and we all like loved it and agreed. I remember we brought him home that day. And Stanley was a very timid dog.
Yeah.
Very mellow, very timid. And we bring him through the garage door.
I remember, I was going to tell this exact story.
And both of our cats, he's greeted by 2 cats who immediately flip out on him.
Yeah.
And they're declawed.
Full on boxing match.
They attack him, and he immediately, right when he comes to the door, tail between his legs, runs across the house, attacked by these 2 cats. So that was his introduction to our family. And from then on, he knew he was never the alpha.
Yeah, and he never acted like it. He never acted too big for his britches. The cats taught him immediately as soon as he walked in, you are going to be chill.
Totally.
And he ended up the best dog I think I've ever had.
Yeah, he really was.
Yeah, so now we've got Stanley and the 2 cats. Do you want to talk about the 2 cats and their demise?
Yeah, well, I'll just say the 2 cats were interesting because we put them in the box of Sophie was the affectionate, kind-hearted, soft girl who was very affectionate. And then Chester was the more aloof, on his own.
Yeah.
It's kind of aggressive. We kind of gave him that category of being mean.
Yeah.
And they were like long hair cats that were really fluffy, shed a lot.
Yeah, all of our like friends with allergies hated these cats.
We had a cousin, like Sammy, our cousin, allergic. Adam's
had,
best friend, allergic.
Yeah, they would come over and they would have allergy attacks every time they came over. They just knew like, oh yeah, I'm going to come in and have an asthma attack. That's it. That's the rule. I go to the Crewells, I immediately can't breathe. All right, let's go.
Yeah, and those were our cats. So going based on those 2 roles that they were given, Sophie, the affectionate one, was the one I gravitated toward really early on, mainly because she found me in a lot of ways. She would, when I was watching a show in the den, she'd just come sit on my lap or lay on my chest or whatever. The thing I really gravitated toward is she would like come sleep on my bed at night, and she'd kind of find me. And if she couldn't find my bed, the door might be closed, and I'd hear her little paws
just
scratching on the door. So yeah, in those moments, like, and I could go on about those moments and how that made me feel.
And we will.
And we will.
We will later.
I just felt, really loved by her. She would always come find me and just come sleep on my bed. Her move was I'd be laying on my back, just staring at the ceiling or whatever. Another thing is at this age, I had a very strict bedtime. I'm like 12, 13 years old.
Yeah.
And it was too early for me, in my opinion. If I were going to make a case.
I agree.
Thank you. 8:30 was too early.
Too early for an 8th grader.
You're only going to watch half of American Idol.
Yeah.
That's not.
You've got to be able to stay for the full episode.
You're not going to get to see who's actually the results.
You never get to see who's eliminated.
No, you're just going to see the famous celebrity.
Unless it's the finale. Mom and Dad will let you stay up for the finale.
All right. But you'd have to,
you'd have to fight for it.
You'd push. So the reason I bring up the bedtime is because I had a lot of time to just lay in bed and think because I wasn't tired.
Yeah. That's so funny. You're old enough to just lay in bed and think, and you're still like, you got to go to bed at 8:30.
Right.
I'm self-aware right now. Don't make me lay in bed and think about life.
Right. So I had a lot of thoughts at this time. And yeah, a lot of them weren't always good thoughts, like a lot of lonely, sad thoughts. Just a lot of like darkness, I feel, in those moments when I look back at that time of my life. A lot of like weeping in a way that I didn't really understand, where my eyes would just kind of well up with tears and just kind of drip out of like it was just very like just like a deep sadness, and I couldn't vocalize it or understand it at the time. And I think a lot of it I attribute to just like, big family, lost in the fray of it. I'm just another kid in this giant family. And I don't feel individually seen, all these things. I attribute it a lot to that.
Mm-hmm.
So in these moments, Sophie would always find me, and her move was to just come lay on my chest while I'm like laying on my back, just staring at the ceiling.
And crying.
And
crying.
And yeah, I'd be crying. And so through my like foggy eyes, I just see her just like staring deep into my soul as like tears are falling down my eyes, and her like purring is just right on my chest, right on my like heartbeat. And, like my aching heart is like being stabilized by this like consistent purr that's just like so present and like is looking right at me through my tears. Crying at that age, you don't really want to experience that with people.
Yeah.
Like if you're hurt and you start crying, like I would always kind of disappear and go finish my cry somewhere else.
Yeah.
And if I'm crying because I'm like sad or whatever, like people are like, "Oh no, what's wrong?" And they're telling you, "How can I help you stop crying?"
Stop crying. Yeah. Crying is bad.
Yeah.
And I will help you stop doing this.
Exactly. So Sophie was like the first person that I just like cried in front of and didn't feel pressure to like stop crying.
Yeah.
And she just looked at me and was there and just like loved me so much in that moment. So yeah, I had a really like special bond with her because she was always there in those really lonely moments for me, which was like the moments before bed when I'm like, what is my purpose? Who am I? Why the fuck am I here? Who am I?
Yeah.
In those moments, she was there to just be like a consistent calming presence for me. So yeah, I had a really special bond with her.
Yeah.
For sure.
And this is all before Ruby. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of pets, my dog is here, and she is
I do see.
not very chill. She's begging us actually to take her outside right now. So let's go to break, and let's come back, and let's introduce Ruby, who you guys heard a little bit about at the beginning.
Yeah.
And we're going to get the whole story right after this break.
Let's do it.
In that eulogy you gave at the beginning, or that you reread in the beginning, you talk a little bit about how we went and got Ruby, but tell us a little more. Tell us a little more about like that time of your life and what you remember, what you maybe don't remember or remember incorrectly. I love hearing you talk about that moment of getting Ruby and kind of what that meant to you. So yeah.
I think I just remember it so vividly. Because at that time in my life, I loved Stanley, our dog at the time. He was like 3 or 4 at this time. I loved Stanley, and was quickly gaining the reputation of being a dog whisperer.
Mm-hmm.
So I think why that day and that moment was so impactful, and I kind of touched on it in the eulogy, was that I was the dog whisperer, but it was always just something that was said. And in that day, it was something that was like manifested in Ruby. It was like, we not only like see that aspect of you, but like we're going to like indulge in that with you. So I just felt so seen by like my parents and my other siblings, who were so like visibly excited for me as well. So that's really like, I think like that moment, I it's just the best gift, the best like thing my parents have ever done for me was Ruby. And it was just an investment. Like it paid dividends every year. It was a great investment.
Yeah.
So I look at it in that way very much, that like my parents, it was just like the greatest thing ever. Just like a great day to spend with my family. It was just like my day, better than any birthday, better than any like celebration with my family.
Yeah.
It was like my day. And I loved it so much. I remember we pulled up in the van. Nobody had confirmed to me that we were getting a dog yet. And we pulled up to the farm. I thought it was just some day trip in middle of nowhere, Western Kansas.
Which is something we would have done.
Yeah.
We did that sometimes.
Dad would, just be like, let's just get in the van and let's just go. Let's just go to Pratt, Kansas. Let's see what's up.
Let's see what's over there.
Yeah.
Ride horses and nobody likes horses? Let's try it. Why not?
Yeah, so it was on brand for our family for there not to be a dog at the end of the tunnel. But I really, if I'm being honest, I had some weird suspicion, and I don't know why. Ellie kind of spilled the beans a little bit by asking if you were going to get a dog, what kind of dog would it be? So I remember we pull up, both of them are girls, which mom brings up as if that's like something that like is going to deter me from getting the dog.
Change your feelings about this moment.
Yeah. And I like was still in the moment of realizing it was like really happening. And then we get there and we're playing with both the dogs. They're both really, really small dogs. One's a little more hyper, one's a little more mellow. And so we're all like, obviously, let's take the mellow one because that's our family.
Yeah.
And I'm still like absorbing all of this, not knowing I have any say in the matter. And yeah, we land on Ruby because she was the mellow one of the two. And I would have taken either. It didn't matter to me. I remember pulling away and like seeing the other dog bark, and it was like really sad for me. But literally the entire like ride home, she sat in my lap, and there's a picture out there somewhere. I haven't been able to find it, but of her that day sitting in my lap in like the front seat of the van. And then we went to a Pizza Hut in middle of nowhere, Kansas. After we're all talking about names, what to name her. We got a 2-liter of Sierra Miss, and I was like, wow, Misty. Let's name her Misty. I was like, it'd be perfect. We'd get her a green collar. She'd be Misty.
I do remember the naming of this dog was very contentious.
It was, because I couldn't decide.
But
That
you were
was
also
too
a
much.
kid. You were young. And there's a lot of pressure to put on
10,
you. And
going on 11.
We made fun of you for every name you wanted to call the dog.
Yeah, Misty. I got a lot of shit from Misty,
Yeah.
and I didn't throw any names out for a while. I remember Teddy, our oldest brother. It had been a few days, and we still hadn't decided on a name. And my mom hands me her cell phone at the time, and it's like, "Hey, Teddy wants to talk. He's got some name ideas." And his first name idea was Goose, and
Such a Teddy name.
it was such a Teddy name. And I didn't know. Yeah, I was too young to like push back on it at all. I was just like, okay. And he's like, all right, I've got another idea. What do you think about like Ruby? Because Ruby at the time was very red. She wasn't as blonde as she was when she passed. She was very red, and she had a very like bright red stripe on the back, kind of more of like just Ruby, like a kind of a copper red on the top of her back. So Ruby just felt perfect. It was just short, 2 syllables, and that's why we named her Ruby. I remember the first day we had her in the house, and this kind of set the tone for me and her's relationship toward the rest of the family. But we're like an hour or two in, we're all in the living room, just kind of everyone's eyes on her. And she goes to some corner, takes a squat, and pisses. And then everyone looks at me. It's like, George, it's your dog. Welcome to the show. Like, and that set the tone for how Ruby and I like were toward the family. Like that was it. This is how I look at it now. She was my dog when she was a bad dog. The family dog when she was a good dog.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Like, no question, that's the truth.
Yeah, so that's how that day went, and still just like has to be just like the best day of my childhood, honestly. Looking back, I just felt so close to my family. I felt so individually like close to myself. Yeah, it was just like the best day ever.
Yeah. So that's what it looks like at the beginning. You get Ruby, she's yours. You're cleaning up her piss, but you're also having the good moments. You're like 10 years old. You start to grow up. How do you, like, when do you know, like, oh, this is special? Like, what's the first moment you remember thinking, maybe not that Ruby was special, but that, like, your relationship or your love for animals, or specifically your love for Ruby, was like, this is, like, real and different and something I'm going to write a eulogy for and cry about when I'm 22 years old when she dies?
I think something that validated our relationship for me a lot was when other people pointed it out. Just like being that young, kind of needing other people to define that for me.
Yeah.
So moments that come to mind are there was a Christmas Eve where Teddy and Ellie, our oldest siblings, came and spent the night. Toby and Mariah were there. Like, just like all of our family was there, and it was one of the last years where we had everyone home for Christmas, and like Ruby was still pretty young. I had just gotten a onesie on Christmas Eve, and I was like a little too old for a onesie, kind of on a growth spurt. Like,
yeah,
it was like a silly time to be wearing a onesie.
I remember this picture.
Yeah. It's just like good vibes. Like Christmas Eve, we had already opened all the presents. We're all like indulging in the new presents we got. One of mine was a onesie. And I remember one of you just like strumming on the guitar. I think Toby was. And I was just laying on the floor because all the couches were like, all the seats were taken. And Ruby just like came and cuddled like right in the pocket of my arm and my chest. And was just there for like an hour while we just like sprawled out on the floor, just like listening to everyone talk and just being there together. Not really like actively participating, but just being there. And I think Ellie, Teddy's wife, who was on the pod a couple weeks ago, pointed it out and was just like, your guys' relationship is really special. And I needed other people to point that out because I didn't take it for granted, but I didn't understand that was unique.
Yeah.
I just knew that it was Ruby and I. Like, it was Ruby and I. Just, like, we had a bond. Like, dogs just love people. That's what they do. Like, she's just doing that. But I needed other people to be like, no, that's, like, special, what you guys have. So, yeah, that moment sticks out in my head, having someone else point it out. I remember coming home from a camp in high school for, like, a week. I was gone for, like, a week. Mm-hmm. And it was the first time I really remember thinking, like, I'm going to kind of miss Ruby. Like, I'm going to be gone for a week. And I remember getting home, and she was just, like, driven to madness when I got home. Yeah, just wild, like I had never seen her before. And then when I was in the living room and finally had time to settle, she just, like, sprawled out over my lap. And there's a picture, and this is, again, I needed someone else to validate it for me. But Mom took a picture, and I think some Facebook post or something was like, her person is back. And I always, like, there's a part of my heart whenever Mom would, like, refer to me as her person, that just, like, felt so good.
Yeah. Which it's so funny because, like, my dog loves people, and dogs do love people, but it was so clear that the way Ruby, you were her, like, you were her person. She belonged to you, and she knew it. She saw you as a separate person, as a more meaningful person to her than she saw anyone else. And, like, she didn't do that to me when I would have pet her if she sat by me, but she never sought me out and showed me love the way she sought you out and showed you love. Like, and I guess I'm just interested, like, how did that bond grow? How did she learn to know you as her person?
We did get her when she was really young. She was maybe 10 weeks old, and I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
But I did a lot of the raising on my own. Like, not all of it, but a lot of the early stage potty training was on my own, and I'd just gotten a room to myself. So there was a lot of, like, real frustration with her because she was pooping and peeing, and I was too young to know how to handle this. So we really bonded during that stage because I knew I couldn't mess this up. I knew this was my one chance to, like, have a dog. So I was going to make it work, but it was really stressful, and I was really young. I remember trying all different kinds of strategies. Like, I would put her in her crate, put her on my bed with me, sleep there, try to help chill her out. I tried having a leash on her and then tying it to one of my bed posts, and so that she would stay close, and maybe that would help her not shit everywhere.
Did that work? Do you remember?
No. She would also, like, wake me up super early to go outside, and I'm, like, 10 years old, and it's still dark out, but it's like 4 a.m., and that's, like, a really scary time for me. And we'd go outside, and she'd just want to play and not shit. And so I'd be really frustrated, and then we go back inside, and, like, every dog owner's done all of those things, but I did them at 10 years old. So that was the kind of bond I had with her because, like, I had to do a lot of growing up, and she had to do a lot of growing up. So we were just figuring it out and like in it together. So yeah, I think the bond just was like really early, and she was there for a lot of like formative years.
Mm-hmm.
Then the other thing is just like all my friends loved her, so that made it really fun. There's like countless times where my neighbor Nathan would come over, and we'd go get my mom's iPad, and then we'd like run down to my room, chill on my bed. Ruby would come hang out with us, and we'd switch off playing Temple Run together. And one of us would play Temple Run, the other would play with Ruby.
That's funny.
We'd spend hours just in my room doing that.
That's such a 2012 thing to do.
Right? Oh, 2012. We also watched the Avengers trailer hundreds of times on my mom's iPad.
That iPad has seen some shit.
Holy fuck. So many miles on that thing.
Oh, that's so funny.
So
yeah, she lived life with you.
She really did.
She grew up with you.
Yeah, there's like times I remember going on a walk, and she like went for a squirrel or something, and I let go of the leash. Like she, pulled me off the leash, and like I had real moments of like she's gone forever. Like she wouldn't come back.
Just absolute dread. I'm sure.
Yeah. And then she always came back, but yeah, those moments I don't forget those moments because that was fucking scary when I'm 11, 12 years old.
Okay, so you grow up. You and this dog are more bonded than you've probably been to any human ever. Yeah. You're in high school. You're in college now. Like you just grow up. It's the same for Lucy. You grow up a little bit, but oh my god, I'm probably not going to catch it every time, but I keep calling George's dog Lucy, which is my dog, because their names are pretty similar. But in high school, you grow up with Ruby, and then you kind of separate. You go to college. You live separately. So tell us about the last, year of her life and of your guys' relationship and what that looked like, and what did she still see you as her person? Yeah, what kind of was that feeling like?
Yeah, that was like, there's no other way to say it. It was just like really hard. I didn't know like what was like right for me to do. I would come home a lot and like try to take her on walks and stuff. And it was fun. But I always like wanted a little more, and I like knew that wasn't the special part of our relationship. It wasn't the going on walks and playing fetch or whatever.
It was the hours of doing nothing.
Yeah.
And just sitting together.
Yeah. So that was really hard. 'Cause it's easy to just like picture her at home wondering when I'm going to come home. So that was really hard because, there's just no way to explain it to a dog. So, I did do a lot, though. I remember one of my best friends, Grant.
If you weren't going to tell the story, I was going to tell the story.
Yeah, one of my best friends, Grant, his 20th birthday at our little like duplex.
Let's say 21st birthday for the sake of the story.
All right, 21st. And so I just, something about it, like my friend Andrew loved Ruby, Grant loved Ruby. I was just like, let's just bring her to this party with 20 plus people. So me and her went to this pet shop. I got her a nice bath. I got her all dolled up for this birthday.
Did you really?
Yeah. And I bring her there. And someone set up like a photo booth. And so she was in so many photos.
That's so funny.
Just I didn't know about giant golden doodle with like a bunch of like.
She's probably what, like 150 pounds? No, she's chunky. She's probably 80 pounds.
She's like 60, 70, something like that.
So you're in a photo booth with Ruby at this party.
Basically, she was there, and it was really funny. She was out of place, but we're all like really early to our drinking stage of life. So I thought it was just funny to have a dog there while we're all drunk. And it was really funny to have a dog there while we were drunk.
I just remember you sending me the picture of you sitting in the bathroom on the floor next to the toilet, and Ruby's in between your legs, just like, what's going on? My guy's just here puking his guts out on the floor in the bathroom, and I'm here just watching it.
Yeah. That was a really sweet picture. She was laying on the bathroom floor. basically between me, she was in between me, anyone else. She was right in between us. And that was just at an all-time low for me. I felt so shitty, and threw up a lot that night. So she was there to just like, I don't know, be really comforting, and it was great.
I just think that picture is like the perfect description of
Yeah.
your guys' relationship at that time.
Yeah.
So we don't need to get into the details unless you want to of Ruby's death. But about a year later, Ruby dies. And that was probably really hard for you. How interested are you in talking about that?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting part for me is that was like the finality of it, I guess. I knew that she wasn't going to be there forever. We were also at a like weird part of our relationship because I don't know, I wasn't that close to my parents at the time, so I didn't want to go home as much. So I didn't spend as much time with her. I also could tell she was getting a little sick.
Yeah.
And she wasn't quite herself. So it was just, a depressing time and a like sad way to end it. It also was really sudden.
Yeah.
We knew she was kind of sick, but we didn't know when we took her to the vet, they're going to be like, yeah, it's
sick.
It's like today might be what you should do. So that happened. Also Stanley, was like a month before that. We put him down because he was also really sick. So yeah, just hard. The finality of it. Knowing that like, that'll be the last time I like feel her and pet her. I like wondered if I would like remember how she like felt or not, because that was like the most unique thing. She had just like the softest fur. And yeah, I thought I would forget it, and I haven't.
Yeah, I forgot it.
So, yeah, I think that's like the main thing, was that it was really hard and foreign to me because I've never really experienced loss of like a family member that's really close to me. So yeah, that's not a ton there outside of just kind of like a sadness that a lot of people can probably relate to. But there was a lot of reasons why it was hard for me. I wanted to be home more and I wasn't. So there's a little bit of guilt there. And she died at 10 years old, which is a little old, but not like most dogs, like if they're living a healthy life, or live older than that. So there's a lot of like, could I have taken better care of her? Could my parents have taken better care of her? Now I'm mad at my parents. Like there's a lot of other like factors that were like frustrating about the experience. But I knew it was going to happen, and I knew like I even had a phase when I was living at your guys' house where I was like, can we have her live here with us? And we tried it for like a week, and I was gone a lot, and it just like wasn't going to work. But that was me trying to make something work. And it didn't. So yeah, that last year there's kind of a shadow over it for me. But I kind of knew we weren't going to be close forever. So as I was getting older, because unless I just had her live with me. So.
So now you're without a pet for about a year. You're living in your apartment now. This is 2 years ago? 3 years ago? Yeah,
about a full year.
Yeah. You introduce someone new into your life.
Yes,
someone
sir.
special, someone small, someone furry. Tell us a little bit about that.
All right, so Jack started living with me. So moving into my apartment was like surprisingly really hard for me. Something about it felt really overwhelming and like too much for me. I wanted it to be a like fun place where people could hang out, and I just put a lot of stress on myself, making it like a fun environment and a casual place, and it just felt so big, and I was anxious a lot. So yeah, that part of my life was kind of hard, and I was going to therapy, and my therapist mentioned like getting a cat or something. It was hard. I don't know why I never indulged in it earlier. I knew it was something I wanted, but I just I felt like our family pets, I had kind of been like burned a little bit on like how to take care of pets. My parents got rid of our cats kind of without my consent.
Yeah.
And it kind of burned me in a way. So that was really frustrating. And then Ruby passing, like she wasn't in the best health condition, and I resented my family a little bit for that. And like I just like there was a lot of like stress around taking care of a pet for me that I wanted to do it perfectly. That I didn't ever let myself do it until I knew I could do it perfectly. So my therapist helped me like navigate that, and talked about just having the routine of having a pet there, having someone else to take care of. It helped me not ask all these large questions that you don't need to be asking what your purpose in life is every day, every hour. You don't need to ask that all the time. It's important to ask that every now and then, but sometimes it's okay to just like feed your cat and clean the litter box. Just relax and be a human. So I was just really stressed out at this time in my life. And so getting Petey helped with that a lot. That first week, he was also really scared. He was like hiding in my household everywhere. He was under my couch for like 2 days straight. Didn't eat, didn't drink water, didn't use the bathroom, like just terrified. And I remember like looking at him and thinking like, we're in this together, man. Like I'm scared too. This is weird. This is hard. Life's hard. Like I like bonded with him a lot in those moments, because I was like, I'm putting in the effort to make this work. And I know this is really hard for you. I know you're really scared, but like, let's try to make this work. So all that to say, like now I've had him for a full year. And he's showed me a different side of pets that I've never seen before. Our cats weren't as playful and energetic as he is. He's very curious and active. So one of our favorite like hobbies is to like go outside and just kind of like roam around. He'll like climb trees, jump into bushes. Sometimes he'll come out of the bush with a baby bird in his mouth. He's just a spontaneous little fucker. He just likes to run around. So I got to see that side of him. I used to think like I only loved pets when they were affectionate to me, but I've really enjoyed just like watching him. He's so like graceful and elegant. He's really just like tender a lot of the times when he like walks around. And I mean, that's kind of a cat thing to just be like light on your feet and stalk your prey and stuff. But yeah, like he can also be really like affectionate.
Yeah. So what are those moments like? Like when you guys are just hanging out, what does that look like? What does that feel like? Like, yeah, what's your relationship like right now when you're just chilling and playing video games?
Yeah. He'll always at some point come and like make his presence known and sit on my lap or do something, but that's not normally his like his entire existence. But when he is like when I come home, it's almost always the first thing I do is like take my shoes off, unload all my pockets and stuff, and then we sit on my couch and he just like run or just kind of like brushes by me left and right for like a couple minutes.
Yeah.
He will like he'll put his cheek, like he'll like quickly move into my cheek, and then slowly like he'll stop, and then I'll just like press his cheek against my cheek really forcefully. Like so much so that like his lips kind of separate, and then like his gums are exposed, and there's like a little bit of saliva that he leaves on my chest.
It's like a little kiss.
Yeah, it's a little kiss. And like I kind of have to stay perfectly still. And my scruff on my chin kind of provides a nice little scratch pad for him. And it's just like such a vulnerable thing for an animal to do. Put your face into someone else's face that's bigger than you. And you're sitting on their lap. Like they're so much bigger than you. It's like a level of trust that is like really unique. Those are the moments I really cherish with him, is when he's just eating me up, and like when I haven't been home for a while and I don't smell like him, that's like the first thing he does is just brush his body up against every part of my body, trying to make sure I smell like him. It's really comforting.
So earlier today you sent me this poem. It's actually written by one of our brothers. I'm gonna go ahead and read it.
You should.
But I read it and I teared up thinking about why it meant something to you. But then you talking about, that cat, Petey putting his face up to yours and just kind of like sitting there, and both of you just sitting in the moment of embrace in a way, like in a cat's way. But this poem was actually written by my older brother, Toby, who's probably listening to this. So shout out Toby and his poetry. He released a book a year or so ago, 2 years ago. My 3.5-year-old touched my face so softly that it sizzled. His sweet, sticky fingers so focused for a second on the anxious pimple that popped up overnight. Not many people can get close enough to touch such a spot, much less offer such concern. And I feel so sufficient and so loved. And I love the idea. I read that and I teared up, both for Toby and the feeling of his kids.
Yeah, because that's about his 3-year-old little son.
But also for you, and the idea and the feeling of like all of the animals you've had have loved you so dearly and so like intensely and affectionately and softly and carefully and in a way that like you needed. Mm-hmm. They just all have seen you so much and intensely that I just think I'm really thankful that you sent me that poem. And I'm thankful that Toby wrote that poem. Yeah. And I'm thankful that you have the experience of that tender touch, and even just like the memory you had said of crying, and Sophie, the cat from earlier, would just watch you cry, and you knew that you could cry and experience her watching you cry. That intimacy and vulnerability without the self-awareness or the rush to judgment of it is so special. And I'm like intensely proud of you for doing this episode and intensely proud of you for your relationships with animals. Like it's one of my favorite things about you. I think there are a million amazing things about you, but that is up there with one of my favorites because it is so vulnerable and so tender and so sweet and really, really special about you.
Well, thanks. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, that means a lot. Thanks for pushing me to do this episode. I knew the theme, and I was not initially feeling like I wanted it to be so much about me. And you were confidently like, let's like dive into that side of yourself. And yeah, I really appreciate it because there's plenty for me to talk about. And yeah, so thanks for pushing me.
Yeah, I'm glad we did this. And I'm glad you all have listened up to this point. Thank you for listening to all of these episodes. I think this is episode 8 or 9 of the season, and season 1 is coming to an end pretty soon. We probably have 2-ish more episodes, maybe 3. But yeah, we thank you all for listening to this podcast. It's been really fun and really vulnerable at times, and I'm glad, George, that today you got the chance to be intensely vulnerable with your story, because that was a lot that you shared with us.
Yeah, thanks you all for listening, and yeah, I'm excited to read the TikTok comments. if listen to all the haters.
Go to our most recent TikTok video on TikTok and read the comments. It is the reason I haven't posted another TikTok video. It has deeply affected me.
Some of you have too much time on your hands. There's not an audience. Like, I don't care how clever your hate comment is. You're not gonna. Nobody's watching. Like, yeah. But no. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for that. I'm excited to receive some hate comments.
Thank you all for listening, and that is that which binds us.
Yeah.
Did that work, or should I have said something else? Is that which binds us?
Yeah. It didn't work, but
okay. Let's run it back. Thank you all for listening to us talk about George's love for animals, because that is that which binds us.
Thank you all for listening.
Okay, fuck this.
You killed that.
Fuck this.
No, you killed it.
Thank you.
You killed it.